You know that moment when a task is sitting right in front of you, and yet you find yourself circling around it, doing everything else instead. Maybe it's answering that one email you've been putting off for days. Maybe it's starting a report, cleaning the kitchen, or even calling someone back. It's not that you don't know what to do. It's not that the task is impossible. And yet, you find yourself scrolling, checking notifications, rearranging things on your desk, convincing yourself you'll start in 5 minutes. Deep down, you already know that 5 minutes will stretch into an hour, and by the end of the day, the task will still be sitting there, untouched. That sinking feeling, that weight of procrastination, is something almost every human being carries. And the truth is, it's not laziness. It's not a lack of discipline. It's something far more mechanical, something wired into the way your brain handles effort, reward, and avoidance. Today, I want to show you one deceptively simple question that slices right through that fog. A question so straightforward your brain can't help but shift gears when you ask it. No pressure, no motivational speeches, no tricks. Just a mental switch that turns resistance into action in seconds. And before I reveal that question, I want you to understand why it works. Because once you see the science behind it, you'll never look at procrastination the same way again. Here's the uncomfortable truth. When you're staring at a task, your brain doesn't see a task. It sees a potential cost, effort, discomfort, risk of failure, the possibility of boredom. All of those things get magnified in the first few seconds of thinking about doing it. That's why something as small as opening a document can feel heavy. Your brain exaggerates the pain up front. Scientists call this task aversion. But notice this. When you're already doing the task, that resistance almost always fades. Once you're 2 minutes into writing or halfway through washing dishes, you don't feel the same weight you felt before starting. The hardest part is not the doing, it's the starting. Procrastination lives in the gap between intention and initiation. And this is exactly where the one-question technique works its magic. Before I give you the question, let's set the stage. Imagine your brain as a courtroom. On one side sits the voice of avoidance. This is too hard, not now. Later will be better. On the other side sits the voice of intention. You know you need to do this. It won't take long. You'll feel better afterward. These voices battle in your head, and usually avoidance wins because it promises instant relief. Don't do it now. You'll feel better in the moment. That's why you check your phone instead of opening the task. But here's the secret. The battle ends instantly if you ask the right question, because the question changes the rules of the game. It reframes the decision in a way your brain can't escape from. And the question is this: what's the smallest action I can take right now to move this forward? That's it. So simple it almost sounds like nothing. But let's break down why it works, because the psychology behind it is profound. When you ask this question, 3 things happen instantly. First, it shrinks the task. Your brain no longer sees a mountain of effort. Instead, it sees a single step. Open the laptop, type the first sentence, put 1 plate in the dishwasher. And once the task shrinks, the resistance shrinks with it. Second, it creates momentum. Action is addictive. Once you start, you get pulled forward. That's why athletes say the hardest part of a workout is lacing up their shoes. Once they're moving, their body takes over. Third, it hijacks your brain's reward system. Even tiny progress releases dopamine. That chemical hit tells your brain, "See? This feels good." And suddenly, the thing you were avoiding becomes something you actually want to continue. All of this comes from one question, not a pep talk, not a grand plan, just a mental nudge that bypasses resistance. But here's where it gets even more powerful. This question doesn't just stop procrastination, it reshapes how you see yourself. Every time you ask it and follow through, even in the tiniest way, you reinforce the identity of someone who takes action. Think about it. Procrastination isn't just about tasks, it's about self-image. Every time you avoid, you whisper to yourself, "I'm the kind of person who puts things off." And every time you start, no matter how small, you whisper, "I'm the kind of person who moves forward." Over time, that identity shift changes everything. You don't just stop procrastinating on one task. You become someone who approaches life differently. Now, let's go deeper into the framework. I want you to remember 3 steps. Ask, act, anchor. Step 1, ask. Whenever you catch yourself circling around a task, pause and ask, what's the smallest action I can take right now to move this forward? Not tomorrow, not later, right now. Step 2, act. Don't overthink. Do the smallest action your brain suggests. If it's opening the document, do it. If it's writing 1 sentence, do it. If it's putting one dish in the sink, do it. Step 3. Anchor. This is the step most people miss. Once you take that tiny action, let it anchor you into flow. Don't stop after the first sentence. Let the momentum carry you. You'll notice the resistance has already dissolved. These 3 steps form a loop you can use anytime, anywhere. And the beauty is, it never gets old. You don't need willpower. You don't need hours of free time. You just need one question. Let me illustrate with a story. A friend of mine dreaded working on his thesis. Weeks would go by and he wouldn't touch it. Every time he thought about it, the weight of the whole project crushed him. One day, I asked him to try this question. He sighed and said, "Okay, the smallest action I can take is just to open the document." That's it. He did it. And once the document was open, he typed one sentence. The next thing he knew, an hour had passed and he had written 2 pages. The mountain had turned into a doorway, and all it took was one small step. That's the power of shrinking the task. That's the power of asking instead of avoiding. But I want you to imagine something even bigger. What if you made this question a habit? What if every time procrastination showed up, your automatic reflex was to ask, "What's the smallest action?" Think about the ripple effect. Emails get answered faster, projects move forward, rooms get cleaner, conversations happen when they should. The stress of carrying unfinished things in your mind dissolves. And the best part? You don't burn out because you're never demanding massive effort. You're simply unlocking momentum. This is how small hinges swing big doors. And maybe you're wondering, will this really work for me, or is it just another motivational trick? Let me assure you, it works because it aligns with how your brain is wired. Your brain loves closure. It hates open loops. When you start even the tiniest piece of a task, your brain feels the tension of an unfinished action and naturally pushes you to complete it. Psychologists call this the Zeigarnik effect. You can use it to your advantage by starting small and letting your brain's own wiring pull you forward. Combine that with the dopamine boost of progress, and you've created a psychological engine that carries you past procrastination without force. This isn't about fighting yourself. Think about how different your day would look if you built this reflex into your routine. You sit down, you see the pile of work, the email, the workout you don't feel like doing. Instead of slipping into avoidance, you pause, breathe, and ask, "What's the smallest action I can take right now to move this forward?" Not the whole workout, just putting on your shoes. Not the whole report, just opening the file. Not a deep conversation, just sending one message. And in that moment, the resistance fades because the mountain is no longer a mountain. It's just a pebble. Once you take that first step, the psychology of momentum takes over. You've tricked your brain out of hesitation and into forward motion. And the most beautiful part is that this doesn't only apply to tasks you dread. It also works on the goals you secretly want but keep postponing. That book you want to write, the skill you want to learn, the side project you keep putting off. Every single one can begin the same way, with the smallest possible step right now. Big dreams shrink into doable beginnings, and beginnings multiplied day after day create transformation. But let's take this further. There's another layer of power hidden in this one question. It doesn't just cut procrastination, it creates clarity. Because often what paralyzes us isn't just resistance, it's confusion. You look at a task and think, "I don't know where to start." Your brain hates ambiguity. But when you ask what's the smallest action, you force clarity. You can't answer the question without pinpointing a first step. Suddenly, the fog clears. Make an outline, gather materials, write one line. Action replaces uncertainty. And once you've defined that micro step, the task is no longer abstract. It's concrete. Your brain relaxes because it knows exactly what to do next. That clarity alone is enough to dissolve half of procrastination. Now, I want to address a thought you might be having right now. You might be thinking, "This sounds too simple. Can something this small really change how I act?" And the answer is yes, precisely because of its simplicity. The brain loves simplicity. When a method is complicated, when it requires willpower or long planning, you'll procrastinate on the method itself. But when the tool is as simple as a single question, you can apply it instantly. It doesn't matter where you are, how tired you are, or what mood you're in. The question cuts through all of that. In fact, the simplicity is the reason it works when nothing else does. To help you remember it, I want you to imagine this framework as a switch. Every time you face resistance, picture a light switch in your mind. Off means avoidance, on means action. And the way you flip it is by asking this question: what's the smallest action I can take right now to move this forward? That's your mental switch. The more often you flip it, the easier it gets. Soon, you won't even need to consciously think about it. The moment you feel yourself stalling, your brain will trigger the question automatically. And that's when procrastination loses its grip on you, not just for one day, but as a pattern in your life. Let's explore how this plays out in real situations. Imagine you're staring at a blank page, needing to write a proposal. Your brain screams, "This is too much." You flip the switch. The smallest action? Type the title. Suddenly, the page isn't blank anymore, and the barrier is gone. Or you've been avoiding calling someone back. You flip the switch. The smallest action? Open your contacts. That tiny move lowers the threshold, and before you know it, you've pressed dial. Or you've been wanting to exercise but dread the idea of a full workout. You flip the switch. The smallest action? Put on your sneakers. And once the sneakers are on, it feels almost ridiculous not to keep going. These are not tricks. They are leverage points, little hinges that move big doors. Another reason this works is because it aligns with identity, not just behavior. When you repeatedly choose action over avoidance, you are training your brain to see yourself as someone who acts. And identity drives behavior more powerfully than motivation ever will. Motivation is fragile. It comes and goes. Identity is stable. When you say to yourself, "I am the kind of person who always starts small but starts," you no longer depend on fleeting energy. You act because that's who you are. And every small action becomes a vote for that identity. Over time, those votes accumulate until the identity feels unshakable. You're not someone who struggles with procrastination. You're someone who moves forward, step by step, consistently. Now let's touch on the science of why the brain loves this so much. The key lies in dopamine, the neurotransmitter of motivation. Dopamine isn't released when you finish the big task. It's released when you make progress, even tiny progress. That's why checking things off a list feels good. That's why starting small can create such a disproportionate feeling of reward. When you flip the switch with one small action, your brain rewards you chemically, making you want to continue. This is how the smallest possible step creates the largest possible momentum. You don't need to force yourself. You need to prime your brain to crave the next step. I want you to picture your future self. Think of the version of you that's no longer stuck, no longer burdened by endless avoidance. Imagine the relief of looking at your to-do list and knowing you have the power to cut through resistance every single time. That future is not built by massive bursts of effort. It's built by repeatedly asking one simple question. Every time you do, you're not just clearing tasks, you're reshaping your relationship with action itself. You're training your brain to see effort not as a threat, but as a series of tiny doors you can open at will. And on the other side of those doors is a life of clarity, progress, and freedom. So here's my challenge to you. Today, not tomorrow, not someday, today, catch yourself in the act of avoidance. It could be something you've been putting off for hours, days, or even weeks. Pause. Flip the switch. Ask yourself, what's the smallest action I can take right now to move this forward? And then do it. Don't wait for motivation. Don't wait for the perfect time. Just do that one small step. Watch how quickly resistance crumbles. Watch how momentum takes over. Watch how your identity shifts as you prove to yourself that you are someone who acts, and then repeat it again tomorrow, and again the next day, until this question becomes your default response to every challenge in your life. Because at the end of the day, procrastination isn't about tasks, it's about power. The power to direct your own mind instead of being trapped by it. The power to choose action over avoidance. The power to build the life you want, one small step at a time. And that power begins with a question so simple you can carry it in your pocket wherever you go. What's the smallest action I can take right now to move this forward? Remember it, use it, and let it transform the way you live.